Hey, welcome back to our study called For the Love of Rachel. And we're looking at Genesis chapter 29. Today we are looking at verses 1 through 8 specifically. And this study for today is called Providence in the Journey. Let's begin with the end, the journey's end here of Jacob. So in verse 1, we find our author, Moses, fast-forwarding the rest of Jacob's journey. We don't know what happened from Bethel to Haran. There's quite a trip still. But we know that his experience in Bethel was to encourage him and to reinforce to him that God was with him. God promised not to leave him. Bethel was a pivotal moment from him receiving the blessing by deceit to really a new chapter in his life. You know, he was the liar, the cheat. That's how he got the blessing. That's how it came to him. He was already promised it, but that's how it came to him. But now his whole life is beginning to change. Things are going to be different from now on. So now think back to the story of Abraham's servant being sent to Haran to find Isaac's wife. And you find some similarities here. Where did the servant go to first meet? Or where did he first go when he got to Haran? Well, he went to the well, right? Where is Jacob? He goes right to the well. Now, the Bible gives us some details about the scene. First, there are 3 flocks with their shepherds at the well already when Jacob gets there. This is the well that these sheep are watered, so it was a communal well that at least 4 households shared. Over the well, there was a large stone that the shepherds would roll back, and when they would roll it back and forth when they needed to have access to it. I guess it depends on what kind of well it was. Maybe they're afraid the animals would fall into it. Maybe it's to keep the well from getting contaminated, or who knows. But they had a large stone that they would put in front of the mouth of the well to keep it secure, I guess. It doesn't really tell us why, but that's kind of what we assume. But that's what happens. Jacob is there. He sees the group of shepherds there. He sees all the sheep hanging out. And this is the scene upon which he arrives. Now, in verses 4 through 8, we see him meeting the shepherds. So Jacob greets the shepherds, calling them my brothers, and asks them where they are from. Now, he doesn't know who they are. He does not sure. You know, my brothers is an interesting kind of address there. Does He doesn't know that they're actually, if they're related to him or not, so it might be just a happy greeting. But he calls them my brothers. And at this point, Jacob knows that he is in the right place. Because when he talks to them, he asks them some questions, right? He says, where are you from? And they say, we are from Haran. So he's like, all right, good, I'm close to Haran. I'm in the right place. Then he asks the shepherds another question. He says, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? The shepherds say, well, we know him. We know Laban. Now Jacob knows that they know Laban. He begins to really elicit some information from them. He's going to press them a little bit further. Okay, he's in the right place. They know the guy he needs to see, his uncle. And so he asks him, well, is it well with him? And their response is, yeah, it's well. It is well. And they say, see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep. They can see her afar off there over the horizon. She's coming this way. And they say, hey, look he's well. And look, here comes one of his daughters right now, Rachel. So Jacob is at the right place at the right time. Kind of like the servant. Grandpa Abraham, his servant, was in the right place at the right time for Rebekah to show up. And that's what happens with Jacob here. He's at the right time, right place to meet Rachel. The first woman he meets when he gets to Haran is Rachel. Makes you wonder if these similarities did not go unnoticed by Jacob. I mean, doubtless he heard the story of his mother, how his mother had met the servant at the well. It makes you wonder, Jacob's thinking in the back of his mind, wait a minute, I'm at the well, I'm meeting, this woman is coming this way. That's what happened to, that's how the whole story of my mom came about. So, I don't know, it makes you wonder. It doesn't say there anything about it, but it does make you think. People are people, and they remember those kind of things. You remember how, those kinds of stories. So, But Jacob tells the shepherds that it's still high day and the sheep should not be pastured, or they still should be pastured and not gathered together. He's like, why do you have these sheep together here at the well? It's still in the middle of the day. They should be out eating. And he tells them to water the sheep and then to set them back to pasture. Now, why does Jacob tell them this? These are their sheep, right? They're shepherds. Now Jacob is a professional shepherd, businessman. That's what he is. So he's kind of like the top dog. He's in his 70s here, 77 years old. I'm guessing these are probably shepherd boys, young men who are out there with the sheep. That's usually what happens. You graduate from being the shepherd boy to, leading the household. So these are probably young men out there, and he's telling them as an older man what to do. Now, they presumably know that they should have the animals eating, but they're waiting probably for Rachel to come so they can water all the sheep at the same time. But there are many speculations as to what he's thinking about. But it seems that Jacob wants to get rid of the other shepherds. And he's like, hey guys, let's water the sheep and then, because Rachel's coming. But what do? They turn and say, well, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered and the stones rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. Again, we're not told why they had to wait for all the shepherds to arrive before they opened the well. Some suggest that they were shepherd boys and needed all of them there to move the stone. Maybe it's too heavy for one of them to move, and so they need them all together to do that. Others suggest that it was their custom just to wait for everyone, and then they were not prepared to forget or forgo their custom just for a stranger to come and tell them to do that. At any rate, they refused, and nothing happens. So before we move on to the interaction between Jacob and Rachel here, let us consider the comfort of divine providence. There's a great comfort in divine providence. At this point, Jacob is a weak follower of God at best, but he would have to be completely lost to miss the hand of God in the events that are unfolding before him. The question for you is, do you take comfort in the providence of God? If not, are you even aware of God's providence? Thomas Guthrie said, "Believer, what are you doing? Going groaning through the world beneath a load of fears and cares? What should discourage you? What should disturb your peace? What can ruffle the calm spirit of a man who knows that the hands which were once nailed to the tree for him now hold the helm of his destiny? The blessed Savior, who by love's golden scepter reigns within his heart, holds sovereign sway over earth and heaven. And by both bitter and sweet providences, by both coffins and cradles, by both disappointments and joys, by both losses and gains, shall cause all things to work together for good to those who love him, to those who are called according to his purpose." That's a great reminder from Thomas Guthrie there, that the providence of God, seeing God's hand at work in your life, looking back at the things that have happened and tracing what God is doing in your life and how he has brought you to the point you're at now. Even if it's a bad place that you're at now, seeing what God has done and what is he doing right now. People used to do that. People used to be introspective and think about, okay, what is God doing in my heart right now? How has God led me here? And knowing that's always God. It's not, you didn't get there by accident. You didn't get there partly by your choice, but ultimately it's by God's choice. So, it might have been sin that got you to the place, but God is ultimately working out his plan in reality. And so, knowing that God has allowed you maybe to fall into something, why did he do that? What is he trying to teach you? What don't you know? What maybe you're rebelling against God and maybe you need to learn a lesson. Or maybe something's good is happening and wow, and seeing what God has done and blessing and praising God for what he's done because of the good things that have happened in your life. So that's a good practice to get into. Always thinking about what God has done in the world around you. Why are things the way they are now? If God is in control, if God is working all things according to his purpose, as the scripture says, then whatever you're in, whatever situation you're in, he is working that situation out for your good. You may not see it. You might have to work hard to see it. Or you may not ever see it. I don't know. But it's happening. And that should give us comfort. That should give us a peace. That no matter what life throws at us, God is in control. His providence will work out. He will work all things together for the good of those who love Him. And that brings us great comfort. Great comfort. And should give us great joy, too. Knowing that in the end, it's all going to work out for His purposes and for our good. So, how can we not rejoice? Like Thomas Guthrie said, how could we not? So join us next time and we'll look at love at first sight here. We'll look at the interaction between Jacob and Rachel for the first time.